percent. So that particular appraisal was not, in my mind, valid. That was followed in March of this year, March 18th, by an appraisal requested by the Princeton, Consolidated Princeton. That number came in at $540,000. That did include an adjustment for the flooding condition. That did have the right floor space area, etc. And so, to me, that is the most valid of these appraisals. In the negotiations that have gone on between the town and the homeowner, the bottom appraisal, the one that I just described, was tossed out, and an average of the upper two was taken to arrive at 625. I submit that's too much. And I think that we need to make sure, again, our credibility here in dealing with FEMA and making a request, that $664,000 sitting out there, I think now they're willing to put in, what, $595 towards the purchase of this property? And so, they've come down. That isn't a number that we're supposed to use every penny of it to solve this problem by purchasing this house. So again, I say, let's take a careful re-examination of the property value being put on this agreement. $625,000 is too much. $550 in there is more reasonable. I think actually the true market value is probably closer to, $400. Anyway, thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Hi there, Matt Wasserman, 160 Meadowbrook Drive here in Princeton. I'm a little uncertain as to why we're talking about appraisals and fair market value. At the end of the day, there is an offer on the table for $595,000 to give us to abate this issue. If I was to sell my house for $500,000 and someone wanted to offer me $700,000, I wouldn't say no. You know what? The fair market value is $500. Give me $501, and we'll be okay. At the end of the day, we're being offered a certain amount of money to get rid of this issue. I think the piece that is relevant is how much as a town are we willing to pay for this. And I believe, Mr. Kaiser, you had said $30,000 is what we were going to pay out of the Green Acres Fund. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. And as the environmental commissioner here, I just want to mention that Green Acres Fund is meant to, is meant for green acres. It is meant for us to be able to have open space in this community. And I would say that $30,000 to have a 3/4 of an acre piece of open space, a park for our neighbors, is the cheapest money you'll ever spend for open space in this town, considering how many tens of millions of dollars we've spent thus far in town. So I would submit that the price is much, much less than this 500 and some thousand or 600 and some thousand we're talking about. We're talking about $30,000. Thank you.
Mary Coleman on Harris Road, and I'm not a party to this. I'm not a neighbor there, but it occurs to me, I heard Bob mention briefly something about demolition. Is $30,000 actually represent the total cost to the community? So the demolition is included somewhere?
The demolition cost is in addition to the purchase. The purchase price would be $625,000. The amount we were receiving from FEMA is $595,000. The entire grant amount that we're receiving is $664,525. So we would have $69,525 up to that amount to pay for the demolition cost, the legal cost, the survey that was done, and the appraisals, and that's significantly more than we would need to cover those costs. So the only cost to the municipality, the way this contract is currently structured, is the $30,000 in the Green Acres funds. Everything else is paid for by FEMA.
Hello, my name is Marion McCluskey, and I live at 89 Meadowbrook. I don't know that I can add much to the very good comments that have been made
You
so
need
far
to
this evening.
speak
Oh,
closer
sorry.
to the mic. Yep, thanks.
I had the privilege of growing up on Meadowbrook Drive, had a wonderful childhood, and have even been more privileged to return there as a parent and raise my children there. There are not many constants in life. One of them is that that house will flood. It's known as the flood house, and while this probably is your best worst case, to have anybody live there again would be wrong and immoral, I'd have to say. So I ask that you do act for the future of our community and any renters that may be there, and have the house taken down. Thank you very much.
Hi, I'm Barbara Winitsky. I live on 160 Leabrook. I share the rear property.
You need to
line.
speak into the mic.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm on 160 Leabrook. Am I close enough now? I just wanted to say that no matter what my feelings are versus, it is very emotional because the whole landlord-tenant thing and what has gone on historically in that house should never have been built. If in the past 5 years, someone in the zoning committee had okayed a house like that to go up, and the trouble that has happened at that property happened, there would be a whole liability case against the township. That house should never have been built. And it's time to make it right. And yes, is it $30,000? If this is the way we get ourselves out of it, I'd rather pay $30,000 than pay $250,000 that I've also already paid in federal, in addition to whatever I'm going to pay in federal to take care of that house. That's it.
Are there any other comments from the public?
Well, I'm glad the property across from which I live on Lytle Street isn't the only place in Princeton that I've wondered about. I hadn't heard about this before. I have a question. People have referred to developing the site as a pocket park or something like that, but won't the same weather conditions affect that property into the future? I mean, it's not just a matter, it seems to me, of how it affected the house. I would assume some sort of remediation of the terrain would have to be done in order to develop it. Otherwise, the town will incur future expenses maintaining it as a park, as far as liability, safety of children, people who frequent the place, whatever it does become. Is that an issue that has to be considered?
If I could comment, the property slopes from west to east, and the lower area to the east and also adjacent to the stream is the area that floods, but there's the western portion of the lot that floods much less frequent than the portion to the east. So in my view is that play equipment or benches or what have you could be sited on the western part of the lot, and there would be less chance of that particular area flooding.
Can you please use the microphone?
My name is Nira Lavid. I am with my husband the owners of the property. And mixed feeling I have tonight about the property and the results of it. First of all, I want to say that we are also victims. When the property was offered to sell, we had no idea. We thought, if it's there, why not? The price was right, the intention was good. We, for the first, I think, about 7 years, had no flood whatsoever, so we have no problem. Later on, as the weather everywhere and the flood issue increased in size and density, we learned that, oh boy, what did we get into? I want to make a few comments. We treated all our tenants with full opening. It is part of the lease that the property is in a flood zone. We even put in writing over there that any question, any information, any data beyond it can be obtained in the biggest file in the township at the time, called 59 Meadowbrook. We were very open about everything. Not only that, we demand as a requirement to have flood insurance to be presented to us. The tenants were very unfortunate to have this. It's a traumatic event. We offer whatever we could. We even offer our own house to host the kids especially. We were working with them even though we did not have to, in helping them to recuperate and save things, personal belonging as much as could. To hear the word immoral, to hear the word abused, it's really very painful and not fair. We fully cooperate with all the agency of the municipality. Between the health department, we obey by the law of the township, by bylaw, as far as inspection from the construction point of view, from health. We always make sure, not because of the law only, but because of our conscience, not to give the new tenant, in most cases, or not to have the return tenant come, but to a well-maintained and treated home that passed all requirement and beyond. To the value of the house, I can say that yes, from the outside, just another house. Lots of improvement, like brand new windows, double pane Anderson, jacuzzi, brand new oven, washer, dryer, everything. Even the items that we owned were top of the line. We did not spare any money to make the house home for our tenant. Again, I don't think it would be necessary, but as part of the deal, which was done professionally by appraisers, was done with a good intention, and I guess it will be a win-win, and we'll be happy to depart. And I think it's only fair to everybody. I also want to take this opportunity to praise Mr. Kaiser, whom I met, I think, more than my husband. And we spent lots of hours, endless call and conversations and dealing with this, how in the best interest of everybody, including the neighborhood, we try what we could. There are elements that has to do with up there in heaven, which we did not know, is how often there will be flood, when are we going to be spared, and even in one big storm, nothing happened, and we were amazed. So the miracle sometimes does happen. But anyway, a few members of the committee, Bernie Miller and Lance Liebman, were also at site when I was fully wet and muddy in helping and seeing that the best interest of everyone will be served. And again, thank you so much for this many years of agonizing and allow me to cry on your shoulders. Thank you.
Excuse me, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
One of my problems with this is the $30,000 above the FEMA price that I understand that you refuse to accept.
First of all, it's not correct that I refuse.
Pardon?
It's not correct to use the word I refuse.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh,
If I'm
I
not...
didn't mean to offend you, but...
No, that's okay. Just to be
But
correct. Okay.
when we were
I think there is, and Mr. Kaiser perhaps can help me with that, there is a ratio between FEMA and the municipality whenever there is a grant being given. I think so, I'm not mistaken. Not only that, by the rule of FEMA and by the code, the evaluation was done. This including, I can't remember who said it, but when you do appraisal, I think it was quoted as far as, for them, it doesn't matter whether the property in the flood zone or not flood zone, it's matter how much money was invested, and they could foresee that in the future, as we said, with the weather going on like that, the amount of $250 that they have already spent will be by far more in the future, and more, as we see, more frequent floods coming. So that's all I can tell you about that.
Okay, I mean, 'cause I'm not, I agree with everyone who has spoken that this is a good, that this is a deal that has to go through, but I do think that you personally could help the town by accepting a lower price, and I want to, and I'm asking you, would you accept a lower price? I want to quote from a letter that you wrote appealing the $577,300 tax assessment, and you talking about that tax assessment, you know, as you know, you wrote a letter with lots of reasons why that assessment was bad, and you thought that the total value should be $280,000. And then at the end, you said, this property has had no improvement, only necessary repairs after each flood. This increase is excessive, out of line, and unjustifiable. And I have to say, that's how I feel about your demand that you, that we pay $30,000 above the FEMA offer.
Okay, my husband will expand that, but I want to say also another thing. If we were to become rich, I could accept few offer of people who wanted to buy the property, which was above the offering of the municipality. And we said no, because we did not want anybody in the future to go through the agony that we as homeowners, who were misled also by giving this hot potato, and perhaps new tenant, or who knows what they will do. We just wanted an end for anyone, including the municipality. That's number one. If you note that the law says that a replacement house can be built on the footprint of the existing one, we did not want this either. And we have already floor plan and other design of a potential home, which could made really good money for us. But we also were very cautious because of the flood, from the same reason I explained. If you don't mind, my husband will take the floor now.
Hi, my name is Moshe Lavid, and Nira is my wife, and at least on paper I'm the corner, but basically it's her. Can you hear me? Okay. First, I want to follow up on what she said, that condemnation, it's not going to happen because we can always demolish the house, and we are allowed by law to build on the footprint of the house and make mansion. And in this neighborhood, there are houses that are in about $1.5, $1.6 million. So a builder will buy the property for us with a footprint, and then we are going to have, rather than a ranch, we are going to have a basement, first floor, and it's going to be on stilts. So there will be no flood, and so there is a good chance that the builder will buy the property for about $700,000. And if he's not going to buy it, we, Nira and myself, we can do it. We have the resources to do that. But let's go back to the way that the price was decided. We asked for $660. The township came with the appraisal in April 2012. And at that time, the price by the township was $595. FEMA requires 2 appraisals. We came 18 months later, much closer to the deal, and our appraiser was $660. Had our appraisal be a little bit less, then FEMA will take our appraisal, and that will be the price. Because we were a little bit more than 10%, we had to go to a third appraiser. Did you understand the point? You need 2 appraisers. If they are more than 10%, then you have to go third one. I wish that our appraisal will not be $660, it will be $650. There will be no, and the house will be sold for $650, not $625, for $650. The township bought a third appraisal, and you know, in real estate, it's location, location, location. They picked somebody from Berkeley Heights. The guy doesn't know anything about Princeton. He came to Princeton, he wrote that appraisal, $540. Of course, it's outlier, it's not part of the deal. And therefore, FEMA decided, and I don't know about the township, but I know about FEMA, decided to ignore it. So we get 2 numbers, $595 and $660. FEMA decided to go at $595, and we negotiated in good faith with the township, and it came to $625, which I think is a very fair price. Thank you.
I just want to make an important point, was that I was saying that the misunderstanding between the parties...
Excuse me, you've already had an opportunity to
I know,
comment.
but I need to say something because the landlady thought I said that she abused. I was explaining that the house itself, having this, causes the abuse. I'm just making a point that I'm not telling them. It was a misunderstanding. They tried to write something in. It's a misunderstanding. It cannot be rented the way it is. But I think they also make the good point that if we don't accept this offer, they'll probably build and keep renting. So let's not have that happen. Please, let's not have anything like this happen. Let's just say yes to this so that no other people get abused by this whole situation. I need to go on record saying I'm not saying that these people abused. The house itself, the fact that the river runs through, it's not just a flood. Unlike the other places that are flooding in the community, this is actually within that same river bank. You can see the bank of the river.
Thank.
I needed to go online. So.
Are there any other comments from the public?
Hi, my name is Barry Perlman, and I'm also on Meadowbrook Drive, 174 Meadowbrook Drive. I just want to add my voice and name to being in favor of this, and thank you for considering it and just using the history to look forward, and let's use what we've learned from the history to make a good choice here. Thank you.
If there are no other comments from the public, I'd like to return the discussion back to council and see if there are any questions or comments from members of council.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone for being honest and speaking up. This is an issue that can be emotionally driven. It's also an issue that, for me, can make a lot of sense. I don't know. We've spent $30 on truck tires. We spent $30,000 on benches. We spent $30,000 on tiles, on roofs. We spent $30,000 on, I can't tell you how many items. None of those items affect people like we're dealing with here. We're dealing with people's lives. We're dealing with a bad condition. I would rather pay $595,000 or $530,000 also. But the negotiated price was $625,000. And I stand behind when I negotiate. I'm in the real estate business also. And if the negotiated price was $625,000 coming from our professional staff, and that's another reason why I feel a little, I'm not going to say upset, but a little, I would say down, because what I feel is that we're undermining our professional staff. We spend money every single day. Millions of dollars every single day. We're asking for $30,000 of money that has been put aside, allotted for this cause. I pay over $50,000 in taxes in Princeton. I want to see my money go to this cause. Now, anyone can say what they want about appraisals, about how much something's worth, but we're dealing with public safety, and we're dealing with an issue that makes the most common sense way of dealing with that I've seen in years. 95% of funding given to us, our money, but given to us by the federal government. We have to come up with 5 or less % to make this work, and we're up here haggling. This makes no sense. This is not the representation I want for my town. Makes no sense. We can't get together on one issue like this. No, Jenny, I'm talking. $30,000. Now, you can do whatever you want. You can slice it, you can play with numbers, but this is ridiculous. Thank you.
Lance said that I was going to approve this. I said this earlier, and I do approve it. What I was asking is, what I was pointing out is that I believe that the price was too high, but
I agree with you. I agree with the price too high, but we negotiated.
But I'm not haggling. I don't know.
We negotiated with this.
Anyway, I do want to say
we negotiated with this. We all agreed.
You're right. You're
time, please.
You're absolutely right. And I got the information from one of our residents that shed light on these negotiations and gave me pause. And not at all to doubt the wisdom of purchasing this price and using FEMA money, but on the actual purchase price. And the $30,000 above the FEMA price bothers me, but that doesn't mean that I'm going, and I wanted to hear from the homeowner, but that doesn't mean I'm not supporting this. And I do support this, and I'm going to vote in favor of it.
Mr. Simon?
I have a question. One of the speakers from the public asked about the process of condemnation. Could you, Ms. Cecil, please describe what that process would look like if we tried to pursue that?
Sure. First of all, if you did go to condemn the property, the town would have to bear 100% of the cost. The FEMA grant that we've been talking about is a completely voluntary negotiated purchase. So were you to condemn instead, you could definitely not use that grant money. Condemnation, just in general, can be a fairly drawn-out and potentially expensive property, but just to give you like the Reader's Digest version, the first thing you have to do is offer fair market value for the property. That entails getting 1 or potentially 2 appraisals. You have 2 appraisals already, plus the owner's appraisal. So those documents exist. They would probably be taken into consideration by either a jury or condemnation commissioners in assessing the value of the property, and that's what the town would be obligated to pay. In addition, you would have to bear all of the legal costs, obviously, which, depending on how drawn out it is, can become quite substantial. And I suspect here that could certainly be the case, although I don't know how the Levids would react were you to condemn. But, it can be, as I said, a drawn-out process. But what would concern me the most is you've got these 3 appraisals on the books, and those would absolutely be taken into consideration in determining the fair market value. There's just one other thing I just wanted to just mention on the record. The 3 appraisals that were performed, all 3 were done of the property as is, and we've confirmed that. All 3 appraisals had to be approved by NJOEM, so they were reviewed and approved by the Office of Emergency Management, and the actual purchase price that was offered had to be reviewed and approved in advance before we made the offer.
Could I, Trishka, clarification, when you say as is, does that mean including the knowledge that the house is in a flood zone?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Ms. Howard?
I want to thank our staff for working obviously very, very hard on this over a long time, and I think time is not on our side on this. We are racing against the clock to we would lose the federal money if we don't act tonight, and lose this opportunity to really to abate an awful situation. So I'd like to move the resolution. I'm sorry, move the ordinance.
I think, were you going to say more, Patrick, or were you?
Well, I do have one further comment, which is that based on what I've heard tonight, I'm not in favor of any improvements on that property once the house is demolished, on any part of the property. So it can be a field, and I'm fine with that. I'm not in favor of putting any, spending any capital.
But would that come back to us for determination anyway? Next steps?
I do actually have a question. Do you know what this house is paying in taxes on an annual basis?
I believe Ms. Monzo has that information.
I do somewhere. Is that on? At the assessed value of the $577,300, the annual taxes, now this is based on not the new rate for 2014 because that hasn't been approved yet, so on the tax rate from 2013 is the total bill is $12,302.26. Of that, the municipal portion is about $2,621.
Thank you. I agree with much that has been said this evening. I want to thank, in particular, Mr. Waltman. Your comments were helpful to me because your talk about the humanitarian approach was helpful, because when we've heard so many stories of people who've been renting this house who appeared not to be fully knowledgeable in spite of their contention that they informed residents, it's hard not to be resentful about this money. The money is coming from open space, and that money is usually combined with other money it's leveraged for greater goods. So it's $30,000, but that's usually a portion of a bigger purchase. And quite frankly, this isn't a property, I don't think, that's really identified in our master plan as a desirable property. It doesn't connect to anything in particular. It doesn't create a bikeway, or this won't be a fabulous park. It really will be, a pocket park in a limited area, usable for some people. So it's hard not to feel a little resentful about the money, even though Lance has a point that we certainly spent $30,000 on a lot of things, but it's open space, and we all value that, and we all have open space we'd like to see purchased, and this was not exactly in our plans. But I think the humanitarian approach is, when you talk about that, I think we just have to get beyond the history and think that if this had been someone living in this home, that we would, and they had fallen on repeated hard times, flooding through no fault of their own, we wouldn't probably view this as being as overpaying for this. We would want to do that for someone. And so given the other things that have been said and time being of the essence, I really would also be in favor of moving forward with this. And I do want to thank Bob Kaiser. I know he's worked very hard and for many years on this. So,
Council President, I'd like to move the ordinance, move adoption.
Second.
Madam Clerk, would you call the roll, please?
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Cronmiller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
yes.
Mr. Simon?
No.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Somebody grab the mayor. Do you see her outside? There she goes.
If you could invite the mayor to come back in, please.
Bob, I didn't get a chance to thank you, but I wanted to thank you too. I know, Bob Kaiser, I know you've worked really hard on this, and I know all the township committee have lived with this, and we haven't.
All right. Thank you, and I want to thank the group that's here for the call center. I know this has been a long wait, and I wanted to call up Chris Iliff, and if you want to introduce, this is for the resolution that my screen's down. Oops. So this is Resolution 14-184, the Professional Services Agreement for Fusion Marketing Call Center Marketing Services for $12,000. And as Council knows, this is the service we're going to be starting up later this summer with one phone number for residents to call if they have a question or need to report a pothole, and it's going to have an app with it too. But in order for it to work, we need to make sure everybody knows about it. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Okay, that's better. Thank you for having us here and listening to what we have to say. My name is Christina Rothman-Iliff. This is Deb Rogers. As you know, as the mayor said, we're with your support, of course, we're implementing the call center. And we've been working with the departments to get everybody up and running and to learn all about what each department has to offer. We're going to start training with them this week on the end users part of the C-Click Fix program. And a big part of the success is going to be your support, which you've given us, in addition to launching this and advertising appropriately. And that's where Fusion Marketing comes into play. We got some proposals from 2 marketing firms, in addition to spoke to 2 other firms that were not able to provide us with proposals. And we believe that Fusion is a really good fit for the town. This is Kate Morgan and Maeve Egner. And they'll answer any questions you might have in reference to the proposals that you guys got last week. But they had some really great ideas in reference to launching this. So if you have any questions.
Are there any questions from council on this PSA?
No, I just want, can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you. I think this is a great idea. I think it's a benefit for the community. And I think that, this is another way that Princeton is going to be on the map. So I just want to thank everyone on council and everyone for moving forward. It's a great idea.
Yeah, Mr. Kamala?
Is there an elected official on the committee or that's going to be going over the brand and the logo and everything?
We hadn't really thought about that as of yet. We have a meeting tomorrow where we're going to start talking about things. I mean, we can get into it, sure.
Yeah, I was going to say yes. Yeah, okay.
I nominate Councilwoman Cromiller.
Thank you.
Second.
You might as well, because then I'll be guaranteed.
Oh, good.
Okay.
But no, this is something that I think is going to make a real difference in the way residents interact with the municipal government, and we're going to hear more from you, I guess, as the summer proceeds with the rollouts and the official launch and everything else. So great. All right. So is there a motion then?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Ms. Kremler. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The resolution passes. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yes, all right, now we're going to go back, so I don't forget, we're going to go back to staff reports, and then we'll come back and pick up the resolution. So, Mr. Kaiser, did you have any reports for us this evening?
Yes, thank you very much, and Deanna Stockton has a short report as well. But I wanted to start out regarding giving an update relating to the hospital site, and there was a email that was put out today, and based on the information that occurred this past week, UNUSI is still doing some recycling work on site. In addition, regarding the removal of the two 6,000-gallon fuel tanks, there was some contamination that was found in the soil that remained. As a result, Ecol Sciences has completed additional soil borings, and they're waiting for the test results to come back. All the soil that was removed in relation to those two 6,000-gallon tanks has now been removed from the site. In addition, the asbestos removal is continuing, and it's anticipated to continue for another 6 to 7 weeks. That's the update.
Great, thank you.
Regarding the hospital site, and then regarding other projects. Mercer Road project was completed, not last week, but the previous week. In addition, Quaker Road is scheduled for this next week, not this week, but the following week, to have that completed. Also, the Route 206 work was completed this past Friday evening with the paving. They started the trench work up on Ewing Street where there was a water problem, and they anticipate having that trench drain installed by the end of this week, as well as the new striping of 206. In addition, we've been notified by DOT that they plan to mill and resurface the section of 206 between Nassau Street and the Lawrence Township line sometime this fall. So we're working with them in terms of developing that particular scope of work. So hopefully by the end of the year, the entire length of 206 running through Princeton will be on new pavement. Deanna?
I just wanted to bring an update on the Park Moore Van Deventer project. The underground piping work is finally winding down, and there's very visible improvements that can be seen on Park Place. The majority of the sidewalks have been replaced. There's a little bit of work remaining on Van Deventer for sidewalks as well as on Moore Street, but we're anxiously anticipating a resurfacing of the roadways, probably starting within the next month, with completion by the end of summer.
Terrific. Thank you. Could I ask
Ms. Butler?
Bob a question? Did you say they're going to do 206 from Nassau to the Lawrence line?
Yes, to pick
Stockton.
up at the intersection of Nassau and Stockton, where they completed this past week, and then run all the way to the Lawrence Township line.
Will they just be resurfacing the street, or are they going to do curb work along the monument?
I've asked them about that, as well as the drainage problem in front of Monument Hall. They're looking to us for additional information. They have indicated that they are planning to replace curb in kind, and also that we will need to get them before the HPC because that particular section of road is part of the historic district.
Okay, good. And they're going to do that this summer?
The current plans are to do it this fall.
Oh, this fall. Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Are there any other reports from members of staff? No? Okay. Thank you. So I think now we're back on track with the agenda. We'll pick up with Resolution 14-185, the IT strategic plan, and everybody got a slightly different version of it at your spot. And the main difference is just in the be it resolved line, and it changes adopts to accepts. And the intention of that was just because it's a very long, complicated report. I think there were some concerns that we don't want to be committing to every single word in the report, but certainly, we can accept it as being the work of the consultant and to use it to guide the IT steering committee in its work.
Right, can I?
Yeah, Ms. Crumler.
I just wanted to talk a little bit. The IT steering committee has met 3 times, and I think it's a really good committee. The formation of this committee is already an improvement to our IT policy, and that expenditures are going to be prioritized and researched by a larger group, not just the IT staff. We're sharing IT knowledge between departments and with the schools and the library. It's already proved fruitful, especially about the printing. That was a really good discussion with the schools who had done a lot of research on lowering printing costs. We're sharing, we don't intend to follow this plan. It's really a guide. But it is a good guide, and the IT committee has spent some time with the priority items. And I think Patrick had some concerns about the priority list, and I don't know if you've looked it over or how you feel about that, Patrick, because I do want your support because you are an expert in this field.
Well, not in municipal IT, but I do work in IT, and I have not had enough of a chance to review the recommendations on the priorities to make to come to a conclusion whether I endorse them as they're currently stated. I do have very strong feelings about the plan overall. I don't think it reflects a plan that this council should adopt or accept. I am very comfortable with treating this as a working document that the IT steering committee works with. And I would certainly be supportive of a resolution at some point in the future that says here's the IT initiatives that we intend to support in priority order or bring forth in priority order. That makes a lot of sense to me. The plan itself, I think, frankly, needs a lot of work. I think it, as stated, it prioritizes IT above it implies that IT will grow in terms of staffing and budget at above the rate that the budget overall will grow. In other words, that IT will assume a larger portion of the budget, and I'm not ready to commit to that as a priority of council at this point. There is plenty of value in the report, and I do recognize that we will have to spend on various initiatives, including, for example, document management at some point in the not-too-distant future, but I'm not ready to make the leap from there to the conclusions in the report that the staffing should be substantially increased and that the spending on IT should be substantially increased above the rate that we're increasing the budget year by year overall.
Yeah, Mr. Ullman?
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of, I don't know. I didn't know that's what we were doing, Patrick. I mean, I read the report. I didn't know that we were voting the budget. I mean, voting dollars and cents. I know that the expandability, but I thought it was based on if we're able to do it, not that this report is saying that we're accepting all that. I know that's what we were doing. Well, so if that's what you're saying.
Well, when I consider what it means to adopt a plan or even accept a plan, what I would expect our administration and staff to do with that would be to basically work to enact it, to follow it, and have the IT steering committee work it, and more or less, and I'm perfectly happy to have them use it as a guide, but I frankly want them to deviate from the current plan in its current form. I think it privileges IT to an extent that is beyond what I'm willing to assert, especially given some of the capital needs that we have seen in the budget discussions and will expect to see in the budget discussions coming up later this year. So I'm not unhappy with the formation of the IT steering committee. I'm not unhappy with prioritization of projects. I do want to introduce a note of caution into the budget aspect of it that I think is missing from the current plan.
I think, though, that this might just be a semantic difference. I mean, I think, to me, the word accepts is exactly what you're talking about. It's not saying that council is agreeing to every part of this. I think it's also important to remember that any budgeting items will be put into an operating or capital budget request that comes before council, and ultimately even if the capital budget or operating budget's adopted, any expenditures come back in a resolution form for council approval. So this, in my eyes, this is not saying that we're going to raise our IT budget up to a level because the report's saying that. The report's saying that is what generally happens in the IT industry and government, but it's not saying that Princeton has to do that. It's a recommendation, and that's all it is. If the IT steering committee comes back and takes a look at this recommendation and says, well, we can't do that here in Princeton due to our budget process, then it's not going to happen. And I don't think that that means we're going against the plan. The idea was to develop the IT steering committee to go through this and look at these projects and then determine whether or not, based on a financial impact and a need, they should move forward, which would then come back to council for approval. So in my eyes, I feel that it's a recommendation, a guide for us to work off of, and as we tackle these projects and we look at them, then we make the determination. For instance, if the document imaging came back at $250,000, is it worth spending that, or is it worth keeping the paper copies of that, which we currently do? That's a decision that would ultimately come back to you based on a recommendation from the IT steering committee.
Ms. Butler?
You know, we frequently have reports, and I, in the past, have said, because we did that in the borough, I've moved to accept a report, and in fact, then you've waved it off and said, I don't think we need to accept the report. So I went to Robert's Rules of Order, actually, to see how the protocol is. Accepting a report does mean you are taking responsibility for everything that's in the report. So I don't think, I mean, if we agree with Patrick, I don't think, and we don't think we want to take responsibility for everything that's in this IT plan, but instead want to use it as some roadmap, I don't think we want to accept the report that turns out to be not what you want to do according to Robert's Rules of Order. Accepting the...
But I mean, I don't know, I mean, I don't want to get into like a semantic, like what is, but, you know, what's taking responsibility for it? I mean, I know we've accepted, for example, the rec department plan, and we certainly haven't followed everything in that. And we tend to say when somebody gives a big report that we accept it, but
we don't. I mean, that's what you've stopped, you basically have waved off from doing that and accepting this. Well, I'm just saying, if you accept it, you are kind of agreeing to what's in the report. That's
I think as the difference is accepting it as a roadmap or accepting. I don't think it's possible to ever accept a strategic plan if you're going to say accepting it is locking yourself into something that spans over a 5 or 6 year period. Like none of us in good conscience to agree to that for anything.
Yeah. Well, can I suggest would this change of wording help if we said, okay, yeah, Heather just had a good suggestion, receives the plan as a guide.
I would be more comfortable with refers the plan to the IT steering committee.
Pardon?
Refers the plan to the IT steering committee as a guide.
How about receives
I'm perfectly fine with
as
that.
a guide and refers it to the strategic IT committee?
I don't think you need the receive. We can just refer it to the IT committee.
Yeah, you're talking about not taking an action on it except to send it to the IT steering committee.
Send it to the IT steering.
Patrick, just a couple comments. I mean, I had some of the same concerns that you had in terms of the financing or the budget, but you know, in my estimation, when you accept this plan, it is just a guideline. It doesn't mean administration is then going to rush to try to implement all of these things. That's where I kind of disagree. I don't think we would bring you items that I think may be mentioned in the plan or outlined in the plan, but bring it to the council for that discussion, because you have to have that discussion about how is this going to be funded? Should this take precedence over some other pressing issues that we may have? And that's where you have that discussion that kind of pulls together all the recommendations in the plan and decide how that fits in with everybody else's plan and your plan for the rest of the municipality. So, you know, I don't think it's something that we're just going to stick to and rush to, or even bring you everything's in there and recommend that we implement it. as I'm not sure I agree with all of the recommendations that are in that, I mean, from an administrative standpoint. So I think really what this does is just raise the discussion.
It's really it's also an outline. It's always good to have an outline, even if some of the things you're saying no to, they raise the question for you to say yes or no to.
Right.
I mean, I go back to the fact we've done this for the police department, and you've accepted those plans and studies that have come in. It's just saying that, we spent money on the consultant to do an evaluation who's now making recommendations that the town is going to take a look at those recommendations and make a determination. Is this something that we should move forward? Is it something that we should wait? Is it something that should be in the 5-year plan? I mean, currently, the way it had been is that me as the chief information officer met with administration and talked about capital budget items. We now have a committee made up of members of all departments, or the majority of the departments in town, looking at the different projects coming in and getting the input from engineering of why something they need is important, so that it's more of a justification process and it's not just one or two people making a decision to move forward.
We've already passed a resolution creating the IT steering committee and giving them charge. That's not what's up for debate here in proposing this plan. What's up for debate here is whether we accept this plan as a good plan for Princeton, and I think it's deficient in several important ways. At the high level, I think it is privileging the IT investment over other investments, and I don't think that's an appropriate. I don't think that's the plan that we should be endorsing at this point. There is plenty in the report from the consultant that is valuable, but I think there's also plenty that I think the IT steering committee would be well advised to basically review and make true for Princeton. I actually have a concern with the idea of adopting a plan as a plan that we don't intend to implement. One of my frustrations as when I was first elected, and even when I was running for election, was looking at our 5-year capital budget that we put up to the state, and it was basically to fulfill a state obligation, but it was not meaningful to the public. I want our plans to be meaningful to the public and also meaningful to the staff, that they can actually work toward those and have confidence. We're asking them to follow this plan. If we're asking them to review it and reshape it, we're not really accepting the plan. And I understand that every plan gets reviewed and reshaped over time to begin with, but I think this one needs review and reshape before we even would accept it. That's my personal opinion in reviewing the plan.
Right, and that's where we left things after the consultant came and presented. We referred it, that's why we set up the steering committee, and we referred it to the steering committee, and they've met, and that is what came back to us, is the recommendations of the steering committee. So that's what this document is supposed to be. It went through the process that you're asking for it to go through.
I understand that, but I did voice my concern to Councilwoman Krumler, who was on that committee, and you can certainly correct me if I've got this wrong, but you focused on the prioritization of the projects. And I would say what was on our agenda was the entire plan. Right. So I tried to review the entire plan and didn't even get to what you had focused on, frankly, in terms of focusing on detail. And shame on me for not having reviewed it in the proper order. But there is plenty in the plan that I simply disagree with, and I don't think it's a good plan for Princeton in its current form. That is not to say that there's nothing of value. There's plenty of value in this plan as well, but I would encourage one of two routes. Either bring back the priority, the project initiatives in priority as a resolution at a later date for us to review, and I'd be perfectly happy to consider that, or bring back the entire plan after you've reviewed it and worked it and gotten input from certainly me and whoever else has concerns about it. I do have the impression that I'm not the only one who's got concerns, even though I'm voicing them most strongly right now.
If I could just say, though, we didn't just review priorities. Every committee member read the report, and we had a discussion if anybody had any comments or concerns about stuff that was in the body of the report prior to priorities. that we would talk about it, and nobody on the committee raised any concerns on that. So we did talk about that. We told everyone to please read this plan ahead of time, and if you have concerns on any of the part prior to the priorities, let's hash that out before we're going back, and everybody was in agreement with that part, and then we started tackling the priorities. So we did, talk about the body of the plan as well.
I've been trying to be constructive because I feel like if I get very specific in my criticisms, it will potentially be destructive and make it more difficult for the IT steering committee to do their job than for Mr. McQueen to do his job. I've been trying to avoid drilling into specific problems I have with the report, but I will list two simply to give a flavor of the concern I have with the report. The first is on page 11. And it's the mission box. And I'm sorry, I have to get there. Mission, the Town of Princeton IT Department is responsible for achieving excellence that is unparalleled in local government by providing leadership in implementing, supporting, and delivering technology solutions aligned with organizational goals and objectives. If anyone is thinking carefully about that statement, it's an expensive proposition. If we are literally going for unparalleled excellence, we are saying, and we are telling the staff that we want to be a market leader and we're willing to spend for it. If that's the will of the rest of the council, that's fine. In my opinion, there's a bit of hyperbole in here that I think should be tuned. There's much I agree with. The rest of that page I agree with, and the paragraph on the page before I agree with. But the use of unparalleled in local government basically says that in 5 years' time, if we follow this plan, we will be at or near the top of spending compared to New Jersey municipalities. And that's the direction we're going because we want to be out in front on a technology wave. If that's really what we're saying, then we vote for that. I'm not voting for that.
It's not really what we're saying. I think no one here thinks that.
All right, so my second...
Right?
Just to take a second concern, that's what the report says. And if we're accepting the report, this is why I think the report needs work. And just to give another example...
But the last paragraph that says aligned with organization goals and objectives. So it's aligning that strategy with the goals and objectives of the organization.
As I said, I agree with much of what's on that page. I don't agree with that entire box right there.
Well, I'd like to
there's one more, just to give an example, all right? On page 25, there's a sentence that states, currently, the IT department is substantially understaffed, and in order to provide the level of customer assistance, particularly outside of normal business hours, as preferred by town employees, additional staff are mandatory. If you look at the graph on the next page, it shows that less than 20% of the respondents expressed dissatisfaction with service outside of normal business hours. The concern I have is that there are a number of places in the report where it looks to me like the report had conclusions that were intended that are outside of the evidence that's even gathered to support them. This is one example. It's a pretty egregious one, but there's many others. And I have concerns that we are basically moving toward IT excellence because this is what the consultant recommends, and this is what she thought we wanted, and I think it's unbalanced with respect to the allocating appropriately for our budget.
Well, I respect your opinions, and I do want to work with you, and I would suggest that I kind of wish that you had done this a little earlier, but I'm not, but I do, but now that you've raised these things, I think I would like to maybe table this and figure out a way to work with this so that so that we can have a unanimous, or at least, because you are the expert, I don't want to go against what you're saying. And I think you make some valid points, so I'd like to throw it to the rest of the committee that I don't think adopting this strategic plan we're focusing on it right now, but I don't think it's really going to delay our work. So what I would suggest is that we work with Patrick to come up with the plan that he can accept, and we can listen to his concerns.
Well,
And anyone else who has, and we can, of course, anyone else.
Mr.
Lieberman, and I have a comment.
I think that Councilman Simon started off by saying that he's not a municipal government IT specialist. And I heard him say that, and I think he's totally correct. But I do think he is an IT specialist, and I think he knows a lot about what he's talking about. My only problem is that, and this is what always comes back to me, we mentioned process. And the process was, this was before us before. And we sent it back to the IT committee to bring it back to us once they reviewed it and once they decided if this should be brought back to us. This is brought back to us tonight. I don't agree. I agree with Councilman Simon 100% that by me saying I accept this plan is not that I accept spending every dollar that this mentions. That's not what I'm accepting. I'm accepting this as a roadmap. I'm accepting this as a guide for the IT. That's what I'm accepting, not the dollar amount. And I'm also accepting what we, the whole better business practice. I mean, I'm just not accepting this as a 100% line item. You do everything it says, and we move forward, because the town just cannot do that. So, I mean, I'm willing to make a motion to accept this, or if the council feels we should not accept it, that's fine too. But we do need a deadline. We do need a time when this will be accepted.
Well, I'd like to make a motion to either table it or postpone it, so that we could work with any people who have concerns and just have a chance to work it over one more time, because I don't think that's going to delay the work of the IT steering committee, and Patrick's attention to detail will only improve the report.
Jenny, can I ask you a question? If this won't hold up the work of the committee, why is it coming back to us if it's not accepting what's actually in there? If it's really a roadmap, why is it back on the agenda exactly? Because what are we saying if we accept this? Because it does seem to me that if we accept this, we are saying that that's the direction we want to go in. And I'm concerned, as Patrick said, about the investment, we really do need to look at the investment in this in the context of all of our capital spending, I guess.
I didn't read it. I mean, I fully expected that every expenditure that we made would come to us for discussion, and really it was setting priorities rather than, and kind of setting priorities for one thing, which we didn't have before. We just had a cloud of IT needs. So, it was kind of
So it's like the master plan for the IT.
But yeah.
But the other thing is that when the different departments do a strategic plan, they're not looking at the organization holistically, right? They're looking at it strictly through the lens of whoever they are. So I think you have to take it for what it is. This is looking strictly at the organization through the IT lens. And so, yes, it's going to say our biggest problems are IT. And I think it's up to us to then weigh that against, well, what are the priorities of engineering and what are the priorities of police, and to weigh that. The fact that there's language in here that says we want to be the best, it's like, do we want to say we want to be mediocre? I mean, it's sort of like, I think we should all aspire to be leaders in whatever we're doing in municipal government. That doesn't mean that we have to fund it to be a Cadillac version, but I think whatever we're spending on it, I think we should still have everybody in this organization feel like they're working to be the best with the resources that they have, because that's the kind of organization we want to be. I think that's nice language to have. Yeah, Ms. Butler?
I'd make 2 points. I would hope that when a department comes to us with a strategic plan, and Councilwoman Howard, I hope you're listening for the public safety, there isn't one strategic plan, that you would look at it to the best of your ability within the context of the entire community and the governing body, really, and what our resources are. I mean, you have to be realistic. I hope the police aren't going to come back in with a strategic plan that we need 75 officers. We can't afford that.
No, I mean, I would
you know, but so I do hope that they put on a wider lens when we get reports such as this. You know, often in IT, in schools, they do choose not to be out in the forefront of technology because so much of what you can invest in proves not to be worthwhile in the long run, or the second generation is actually an improvement, it's cheaper. And so while we want to be the best at what we do, I think sometimes in IT that can have a different meaning. And I think it is good to be clear about what you mean when you're talking about being the best, because you can choose not to be an early adopter and be out in the front, you know, sort of the one out in front making the mistakes or making the big investment, but waiting to see, let somebody with more resources test the product before you decide what you're going to do.
Well, I'd like to put a motion on the table to table this until we can have a discussion with Patrick.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Krummeler.
That
was sort of hanging out there, right? So it's a motion to table was made by Ms. Krummeler and seconded by Mr. Simon. All in favor?
Aye. Aye. And of course, anyone else, and members of the public as well.
And any opposed?
Hold on. Did you want to hear from members of the public?
Yeah, before we table, yeah, but we'll do it after the vote, just because we're in the middle of the vote, so.
Okay.
Are there any opposed to tabling? Or abstentions? All right, I guess the motion to table passes, and
I just
Mr.
request
Singer, I
that
think
we
you're the
do
only-
keep this
did you want to
on
comment?
the burner to keep it moving.
Okay.
Good evening, it's Henry Singer again. So I was preparing my comments not for after the vote, but so I'm going to make some of my comments that now are sort of overcome by events, but I think they're still relevant for you to consider as you go forward. So the first question I had was, what was the rationale for the revised priorities as compared to those put forward by the consultant in the draft plan? Was it related to an alignment with council or Princeton goals? Was it revised assessment of the benefits? Was it revised estimate of costs, scope, or schedule? Or was it a new process or framework was used to establish priorities? Because there's a change in priorities in this plan versus the previous plan, and just wanted to understand that rationale. If you don't mind, I'll just say a couple of questions, and then if you choose to answer or address my questions, I'll be happy to hear from you. The second set of, it's actually a question, was the revised priorities include the promotion of 4 items and the deprioritization of just 1. Are all of the priority 1 items still relevant for being started in the year 1 time frame and supported by budgets and resources as described in the plan? And that question goes to what Patrick was saying, is that this is a plan. This is not a report. There's a difference in my mind between a strategic plan and a report. This is a plan, and it says these are year 1 priorities with a time frame. So I want to know, do you still intend to, you've added 4, taken away 1, do you still intend to launch those as priorities? The third thing I wanted to say, and I guess this is now really OBE, but I'll say it anyway. I was disappointed that due to an apparent clerical oversight, the revised plan had not been posted to the municipal website for public review as of Sunday evening. Now, Bob was kind enough to get me a copy, so I had a chance to look at it. But I was going to say, in light of the town's commitment to openness, transparency, and civic engagement, is it still appropriate for council to vote on the resolution tonight? Well, I think that's no longer a point, but I do think that certainly it suggests a bigger question about if you have items up for public vote and there is content available, checking to see that it was made available to the public so they can have adequate time to make a comment before you make a vote, I think is an appropriate point of order. So I would suggest that. And my last point, as I think Patrick started to refer to it, at least I thought he was going to, as stated in the plan, the mission of the Princeton IT department is multifaceted: to evaluate the needs of the public through improved citizen interaction, to provide quality, cost-effective services to the community, and to improve public access to the town and its services. If this is true, then perhaps council should reconsider the makeup of the IT Governance Council or Steering Committee, depending which term you use, to enable actual citizen interaction. I had one other minor question. I just wanted to know if there was an update on when C-Fix would be launched. But that's really besides the point. So I don't know if you have any comments or response to my questions, or I can just send them
talk to the priority levels. We, as the IT steering committee, went through the priority levels. Some of them were brought up, like social media, because that's going to be a big tool in marketing C-Fix. So that's what pushed that up. The server virtualization is in process now because we have 2003 servers which are reaching end of life. We need to do something. So that process, they had already approved the expenditures for that back in December or January to purchase that equipment. It was a lower priority. We moved it up because it's in process now. We felt that, and I don't have all of the ones that we moved around in front of me right now, but there were changes based on cost, like moving the printing and multifunction device. That was going to be a cost savings. So we felt that was important to implement in year one so that we could reap those savings sooner than later. Right. So they're the reasons that those got moved around.
Okay. And I wasn't actually trying to suggest I didn't agree with them per se, but want to understand that it seems like there's a new process for setting the priorities as compared to what was described in the plan. And I think to Patrick's point, the plan is actually quite a comprehensive thing, and there's some of it that reads very much like a report, some of it that reads like a plan. And frankly, I have to tell you, if it is an IT strategic plan, you really do need to decide, do you intend to be the best or not? Because your investment decisions have to be characterized in that context. Because there's big differences between we're going to build our own website, or we're going to have somebody build it for us, or we're going to use a standard off the shelf. These are important questions, and they should come from the answering of the question of why. Why are we doing what we're going to do? That's what strategy is about. The how and the what comes from that. And if anything, you really should agree on the strategy. And if you want to see this as a report, and accept it as a report, but not necessarily the strategy that you're endorsing, there's ways around this. But anyway, that's my feedback.
Thank you. Okay, so I guess it goes back to the steering committee, and I'd recommend that Patrick become at least a member of that committee for a while if you have a lot of strong...
I'm certainly happy to attend, one or more meetings to provide my feedback.
I think we can set up a meeting with Kathy, Bob, and you and me, and anyone else who wants to attend.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay. I know this one sort of came up, or that by the time you looked at it, it was probably too late, but I would just also encourage members of council, too, if there's something that you know you're going to have strong opinions about, to talk with whoever the liaison is and try to get in at a point where you can make a difference early on, because I think it just saves everyone time. Just moving forward.
And I understand, but the process change that would help me do that is to know who's considering what when, and so I had no idea this was coming before council at this meeting until we got our agenda on Thursday, and it's, we knew it was out there and it would come back at some point, but I'd like to kind of turn around and also ask that we get a little bit of lead time, especially on 100-page reports, as it were, beyond just the Thursday before.
Okay. Yeah, we can try to do that. And I think Jenny's been good about reporting on this one, too.
Yeah, and I'm not at all unhappy that the IT steering committee is working. I'm just, in fact, I'm happy that they're considering this and moving forward.
But, I want to comment on the report not being on the website. I agree with Mr. Singer that we should make sure that happens. I don't know why that was a problem this time.
We're not sure either. We questioned the webmaster. It was corrected last night. He did get it posted once. Henry brought it to my attention. It was not out there, and I researched that. I think with the clerk's office, we're going to be checking those links now on the agenda to ensure that all the documents are up there. But we don't really know why it didn't get there. But I sent it to Henry last night when he sent me the email so that he had it. I did send it last night, right? Yeah, okay.
Good. Yeah.
No, I was just thinking about it this morning or last night because I was going through a bunch of stuff last night, but we did get it resolved, so.
Just FYI,
it's on the main page.
On that matter, someone said to me today that one of the links went to a different, so the resolution in the consent agenda, the resolution to release political caucus opinion, that actually went to another legal opinion.
Okay.
I was told, so just...
All right, we'll take care of that, make sure it's corrected. I appreciate everyone bringing it to my attention if there's problems, and I try to, even on the weekend, take care of them and get them corrected as best I can.
Okay. The next is Resolution 14-186, which is the Safe Routes to Schools grant application endorsement.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. moved by Ms. Butler and seconded by Mr. Liverman. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution passes unanimously. Next is Resolution 14-187, an interlocal agreement with Lawrence Township for resurfacing of Province Line Road not to exceed $67,500.
Is this new?
Moved.
Second.
It's moved by Ms. Howard, seconded by Mr. Liverman. Is there any discussion or questions? Ms. Butler?
Is this, have we seen this before? This resolution, have we talked about this road work?
No, we haven't. This is a section between Rosedale Road and the Province Line Road Bridge. It's in poor condition, and Lawrence Township would take the lead on this, and we would share the cost 50/50.
Okay.
Is it a budget? Is the bridge?
You need to have your mic on.
Is the bridge still closed?
Yes.
The bridge is closed to vehicular traffic, but has been improved and it's open to bicycle and pedestrian traffic.
Because at one point, the bridge had fallen into disrepair, if I remember correctly, and there was some question about whether or not the neighbors wanted it repaired?
The neighbors still do not want it repaired for vehicular traffic, but the county invested a significant amount of funding to improve the bridge for bicycle and pedestrian traffic.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
They did a really, really nice job. It's a nice wide bridge, and I encourage everybody. There's a nice bike trail that goes out there. It was already moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution passes unanimously. Did you get the, Linda, we will forget who moved and seconded that one? Okay, good. The next is Resolution 14-188, Professional Services Agreement, Community Grants, Planning and Housing, Small Cities Grant Application not to exceed $5,440.
So moved.
It's moved by Ms. Butler and seconded by Mr. Miller. Are there any questions about this one or comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution passes unanimously. Next is Resolution 14-189, 2014 to 2015 liquor license renewals.
I have a question.
Yes.
Who is this? On the second one? The one that was largely initials.
It's a club license. It was a former township license. I believe it's a group that's similar to like an ops organization. I don't know exactly.
Or where it is?
They're on Birch Avenue.
Oh, they're both on,
It is. It's one and the same. That's the whole title. Witherspoon Lodge, Isaac.
Oh, yeah, it's Elks.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the Elks.
Okay.
It's the Elks. The Improved Benevolent Protective Order of Elks.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
These are the final two licenses, and these are the licenses that we approved for annual approval of licenses.
Okay. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's moved by Mr. Miller, seconded by Ms. Krummeller. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The resolution passes unanimously. Last is 14-190, Professional Services Agreement, Neil Yoskin, Esquire, Co-Counsel for Avalon Bay Litigation. Ms. Howard?
I just had a question. You know, the hourly rate is pretty high, but I also recognize that his qualifications seem outstanding given his work with the state and, with DEP. So
I just wanted to ask if that was the best we could get, and if you think that's consistent with what it would take to get somebody with those qualifications.
Most likely. I mean, I can't speak to is that the best you could get, because quite honestly, I just asked him for a proposal, and that was what he sent. Unfortunately, Mr. Brush is not here tonight. I know Neil did work a few years ago for Princeton Borough, and I don't know if this is the same rate that he charged at the time. Bob would know, but as I said, he's not here tonight. I do think that to get somebody on such short notice and with his credentials and qualification and know-how, to me, that seems like a very fair rate. I think you'll get what you're paying for.
In the borough, we used to have in our contracts notification when they reach a certain percentage. Is that in here? I didn't see it.
It's not. There's just a not to exceed
Right,
cost.
but we used to have a line in there that we would be notified when we had reached, I don't know, Jenny, do you remember what it was, 90% or something? So we knew we were bumping up against it. We had a couple instances where we had gone over. Somebody was running by out there. Anyway, is it possible in the future that when we have these professional services agreement,
sure.
we ask for notification when we start to approach the outer limit?
Frankly, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think in this specific instance, given the time frame that we're under, like, he could hit that number pretty quickly, although I don't think he will. The other thing being in litigation, I mean, I'll be honest with you, if he starts to hit that number or go over, my recommendation is going to be authorize more, because, you know, we've estimated very conservatively.
Your recommendation is going to be what?
We've estimated as conservatively as possible in terms of the not-to-exceed cost. But I'll be honest with you, if the litigation has taken a turn where his bills are starting to reach that number, I'm not going to say to you, don't authorize any more, don't use him. I have a feeling my recommendation will be the reverse. However, I think your fundamental point is a really good one, and I'll write down to make sure that we include that in any contract, because I think it's a good idea for the council and it's a good idea for the professional.
Right, and so you might want to check with Bob and see what the percentage was. I forget whether it was...
You think he was 80?
80? Yeah, that would make some sense, so we've got a little room. Thank you.
And maybe if we just ask him for that informally, even if it's not in the contract, to just give us a heads up.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion for this?
So, second.
Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Ms. Krummeller. All in favor?
Is there any public comment? I was just wondering if Mr. Driscoll wanted to...
No, I just urge you to go ahead, and I'm very happy that you're going to go ahead and do this.
Sorry, thanks.
I think it's very, very important that we do everything that we possibly can. I know you all have heard me before, so I'm not going to go on at this hour. I'm very happy. It's great. Thank you.
Well, I agree with Mr. Driscoll that we have to do everything we possibly can, and, you know, I think Mr. Yaskin brings a lot to the table.
Great.
All right, thank you. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the resolution passes unanimously. All right, next we have several bond ordinances. The first one is bond ordinance by the municipality of Princeton authorizing as a local improvement the reconstruction of sidewalks along Edge Hill Street, approximating the sum of $65,000, therefore providing for the financing of said appropriation by the making of a down payment and issuance of bonds or notes of said municipality, and further providing for the special assessment of 50% of the cost thereof. Are there questions on this one? Ooh, it's loud. Or is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
Moved by Ms. Butler, seconded by Ms. Krummeller.
Can I actually just ask, I do have a question, I'm sorry. Can I just ask Mr. Kaiser to comment? This is a reconstruction, so is that standard process to do it this way, or is it normally the property owner's responsibility? What's the...
Typically, when we have a capital improvement project, we do include the review of existing sidewalks in the neighborhood and put together an assessment for the replacement of those sidewalks.
So this is, I'm sorry, this is part of another project?
We have the road resurfacing project or reconstruction project, and there is a second project which has already been awarded. It's the Sewer Operating Committee's project to line the sewer main and replace the laterals within the right-of-way.
Got it. So we
this
simply
is a
didn't include the
follow-up.
sidewalks as part of those earlier ordinances, so we have to do it now. That's what we're saying.
We're doing them now as
Thank
part
you.
of the road,
All right.
yes.
Thank you.
We haven't moved.
We have. Sorry, okay, all right. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Crummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And the public hearing for this ordinance will be on July 28th, 2014. The next is an ordinance creating no parking zones on a portion of Alexander Street and amending the code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Liverman.
Second.
And seconded by Ms. Crummiller. Are there any comments or questions on this ordinance?
Can somebody just tell us the motivation behind this? All it says is TNT recommended it, but can you tell us why we're making these changes?
Yes, two reasons. One is the university has a fire station down there, so we needed to make sure that the fire engine could get out properly, and as a result, working with Tom Murray, the area has already been signed no parking, as indicated here on the plan, and we need to make it official so that it can be enforced. But it was to provide for access by the emergency vehicles and also to provide proper sight distance along this portion of Alexander.
Thank you.
Bob, can I just say, I don't know if it's a fire station or a place where the fire truck is housed. Is it a fire station or is it no, it's a garage with the fire.
It's a garage,
Okay,
correct.
just so
Yes.
no, okay, I don't want anybody to think that there's a fire station. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Crummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller? Yes. Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, and the public hearing for this ordinance will be also on July 28th, 2014. Next is an ordinance by Princeton concerning the leaf, branch, and log collection program and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974, and the Code of the Township of Princeton, New Jersey, 1968. And if you remember, this was the one we were looking at one of our ordinance harmonization sessions, and we sent it back to the Public Works Committee to take a look at, and the Public Works Committee made a few minor changes. But is there a motion for this?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Crummiller and seconded by Mr. Miller. Are there any comments or questions? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Crummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Great. And the public hearing for this ordinance will be on July 28th, 2014. Next is an ordinance public hearing, an ordinance by Princeton relocating one metered parking space from the east side to the west side of Chambers Street and amending the Code of the Borough of Princeton, New Jersey, 1974. I'd like to open the public hearing for this ordinance. Mr. Driscoll, would you like to speak on it? Not to put you on the spot or anything, but...
It's a good ordinance.
All right, seeing no one, I'll close the public hearing. And
I'll move it.
I'll second it.
so moved by Ms. Crummiller, seconded by Mr. Miller. And are there any other comments from council? Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Crummiller?
Yes.
Mr. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Liverman?
Yes.
Ms. Butler?
Yes.
And Mr. Simon?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, then ordinance passes unanimously. We've already done the next one, and now we move on to our consent agenda, which contains items of a routine nature, which are approved by a single vote.
Mayor?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt you, but the last item on that consent agenda, indeed, the wrong resolution was sent to Linda and posted. I don't know how it happened, but it was a screw-up at our end. I have the correct resolution right here on the computer, and I could read it into the record, or we can just pull it out separately. It's all of 3 paragraphs.
Yeah, I mean, I
It's
think
very short.
that it was sent to council, so I think that, we can have a discussion whether my sense is that we're voting on releasing it to the public, and I think everybody on council has seen it, so I would prefer not to delay it anymore.
No, I agree. It's just, I just don't want you voting on the wrong version of the resolution, so that's...
Oh, I see, okay.
And actually,
A very short one. I can read the correct version into the record, is all I was
Okay.
suggesting, before you vote on it, so.
So why don't you pull it from the consent agenda?
To
Okay.
her point, the resolution we actually received in our packet is also the wrong one.
That's what I mean, is the,
Okay. Okay.
I don't know what happened in our computer system, but.
Okay, all right, so in that case,
Well, can I make a motion that we accept letters A through
F.
F?
Yes, you may.
And then we hold off on G.
And is there a second for items A through F on the consent agenda?
Second.
Okay, so it's moved by Mr. Liverman, seconded by Ms. Butler. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so items A through F pass unanimously, and then we'll take up item G separately if you could read it.
Yeah,
If
I can
haven't
read to
read it.
you what should have been in your packets as Resolution 14-196. Whereas the Office of the Princeton Municipal Attorney, Mason, Griffin, and Pearson, has provided an opinion memorandum dated May 30th, 2014, to the Mayor and Council regarding the applicability of the Open Public Meetings Act to political caucus meetings and team-building retreats attended by a quorum or more of the members of the Princeton governing body, and whereas this opinion is subject to attorney-client privilege, and whereas only the council can waive the attorney-client privilege and make the May 30, 2014 opinion public, now therefore be resolved by the Mayor and Council of Princeton on this 23rd day of June, 2014, that same hereby waive the attorney-client privilege with respect to the Princeton Municipal Attorney's opinion set forth in a memorandum from Mason, Griffin, and Pearson, P.C., dated May 30th, 2014, regarding political caucus meetings and team-building retreats, and said opinion therefore is released from its confidentiality restrictions and may be made public.
And is there a motion to approve that?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Miller and seconded by Ms. Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And the resolution passes unanimously, and we should try to go back and fix this for that agenda in case people look there, and then maybe
Absolutely.
we could post it on
I'll
the,
get you the correct version. Something happened in our computer system. I have no idea what.
right? And then we can post it on the
You didn't make a
main, on the main page as well, in case there's, so people can find it.
Well, and so we should post I guess, the opinion along with
Sure.
the agenda as well, right?
Now that you've released it, there's no reason why you can't post
That's what
it.
I meant, yeah. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, we put
Not just the
the,
resolution, but also the opinion it references.
right. Thank you. All right, and is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Howard and seconded by Mr. Willerman. All in favor? Any opposed?
Yeah, we could, I know.